There's a vast difference between conservationists and exclusionists. Perhaps you've noticed that the term environmentalist has fallen out of favor with much of the public, and the conventional media has begun referring to green activists, including the large and well-funded green organizations, as conservationists. However, that is not an accurate use of the term conservationist. A conservationist is one who believes that the nation's natural resources, including the land, the water, minerals, including oil and natural gas, as well as forests and wildlife, should be available for people's use and consumption so long as they are conserved by non-wasteful management practices. Conservationists take a balanced approach between preserving nature and providing for human needs. All reasonable, thoughtful people today, and that certainly includes you and me. We want clean air. We're all conservationists. We want clean air. We want clean water and a full and diverse natural world. But we also want and need jobs, places to live and work, transportation, sources of energy, agricultural products, manufacturing, technology, and the like. Conservationists believe in a balanced and common sense approach to environmental regulation. The Green Movement, on the other hand, embraces the uncompromising exclusionist views. Now, pardon me for any of you who in history have a different impression of this, but the exclusionist views of John Muir. While Muir is deserving of respect for his work in Yosemite, he zealously advocated for a pristine wilderness, and he preached against the intrusion of people. Muir believed, is it working? Muir believed that nature's landscapes, species, and resources existed not to serve man, but independent of man, and were deserving of as much, if not more, recognition than man. Stay with me here. Muir did not care much about people. If Muir had had his way, few of us would be living in the West. In 1892, he sought to perpetuate his exclusionist philosophy by founding the Sierra Club. Today's followers of John Muir's exclusionist philosophy and their many allies in the conventional media, among Hollywood celebrities and liberal politicians, recognize that returning to the era of pristine wilderness and sparse populations is impossible. So instead, they work tirelessly to grind down and obstruct the economic engine that drives commerce, growth, development, and progress. They are ardent anti-capitalists, and they condemn any business endeavor that turns a profit, which means jobs. They oppose the constitutional right of private ownership of land. Unabated, the Green Movement will sooner or later sap the vibrant entrepreneurial spirit that has defined America since the founding. For the past 37 years, hardcore green organizations have used the heavy hand of the Federal Endangered Species Act to elevate plant and wildlife species above the economic, social, and even physical needs and endeavors of people. This is what my book is all about. Major organizations such as the Sierra Club, the Center for Biological Diversity, the Natural Resources Defense Council, the Environmental Defense Fund, Greenpeace, and others, as well as numerous regional green organizations, pursue their agenda through powerful lobbying in the Congress, through highly effective but purely emotion-based fundraising appeals showing photos of polar bear moms with their cubs or wolf moms with their pups, and others, which they claim will be driven to extinction unless the recipients send money. Yep. And through incessant lawsuits, which are almost always successful due to the species first, people last bias of the Endangered Species Act. And they are rewarded for these lawsuits by being awarded taxpayer-funded attorney's fees from the government, which they use to file more lawsuits. The Green Movement's aggressive use of the Endangered Species Act leads to the loss of human lives, destroys livelihoods, and in countless cases all across America, property owners are denied the use of their own land by the Fish and Wildlife Service and other federal agencies so that ESA-listed species can reside on and use their land. Yet the federal government declines to pay them just compensation called for in the Fifth Amendment for basically turning their land into what amounts to a wildlife preserve. My book, Green Gone Wild, tells a story of how modern environmentalism became the juggernaut force it is today, and part 3 of the book, which I call the ESA's Human Misery Index, contains many real-life stories of how human lives and livelihoods and property rights have been lost through the ESA. Many of those are Pacific Legal Foundation court cases that we've been involved in. Now, a classic example of the ESA of an cultural use of the land, the Natural Resources Defense Council and other environmental groups challenged that Fish and Wildlife Service opinion in federal court, charging that the pumps were the prime culprit in the smelt's decline in violation of the Endangered Species Act. This lawsuit resulted in the Fish and Wildlife Service issuing a second biological opinion requiring the pumps to be shut off between December and March. And then with regard to the salmon and 3 out of 4 other species, they have to be shut off between December and June.
Makes sense. When are they on?
So they have to be shut off during that time because that's a time when smelt, young smelt are in the vicinity of the pumps. For the past 2 years, 2008, 2009, little water has been pumped south to the Central Valley. Instead, and listen to this because this is a question about, is it the drought that's causing this problem or is it the Endangered Species Act? Here's the answer. Billions of gallons of Delta water have bypassed the closed pumps and been wasted into the Pacific Ocean in the name of protecting the Delta smelt. Water that would have been enormously helpful to the folks that are going to speak here in just a moment and tell you their individual problems. Ironically, monitoring reports of the smelt's population during these 2 years show no improvement in the numbers as a result of shutting down the pumps. And even with the abundant precipitation we've had in Northern California so far in 2010, the federal government is giving the Central Valley farmers only 5% of their normal allocation. This, while millions of gallons of water continue to bypass the pumps and be wasted into the ocean. And that's where I stop.